mustache. You're growing a full beard.
It's November.
I thought it was just mustaches.
Well, I thought that it would, for like children and small animals, would probably be really scared if I just tried to grow a mustache straight out with no beard. That'd be really pretty scary for a lot of people. So later this week, I'll shave this and then kind of have somewhat of a mustache. So
You could do a goatee.
no, November is just a mustache. I got to get there quick. I'm already cheating again. Okay, 5:30. Let's go over the script for remote conducting of open meetings. So this open meeting of the select board is being conducted remotely pursuant to the Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. As a preliminary matter, we're going to go over all the members who are here and anyone else and staff. When I call your name, please designate that you're here. Board members: Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
Don Holgate.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
And I am here as well. For staff, we have Libby Gibson.
Yeah.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
David Gray.
Here.
Greg Tibnan.
Present.
And Mr. Tom Rafter. Hey, Tom.
Here.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, a couple of little things. We're using Zoom webinar for meetings, which allows for public to participate in the meetings as an attendee. Registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registered to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Usually I call your name beforehand, but if I don't, please state your name. They can click the raise hand button. They will be called on in the order that I see the hands come up. All questions, comments should be directed to the chair. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this board, for this body, are also available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Please remember to mute your phone. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So I will call the November 10th select board meeting to order. And there's no changes to the agenda that I'm aware of. And over to Libby for announcements.
Thank you. The announcements are listed on the agenda. I won't go over, well, I guess I will go over every single one of them. The select board meeting is being video and audio recorded. The COVID vaccine clinic, the town-sponsored clinic, which is taking place at 131 Pleasant Street on Sundays from noon to 3. There is a final dose, first dose clinic on November 28th, final second dose December 18th, and then that clinic ends. So people can certainly go on the town website to see other scheduled times until then and other places on the island where you can get the vaccine. We are having a via the American Legion Post number 82 is holding their annual Veterans Observance Ceremony tomorrow, November 11th at 10:30 at the War Monument next to the town building. And in case of inclement weather, it will be held at the Legion at 21 Washington Street. And there's a reception following at the Legion. Town offices are closed tomorrow in observance of Veterans Day. The deadline for citizen warrant article submittals for the 2022 annual town meeting, which will start on Monday, May 2nd, is next Monday, November 15th through 4 p.m. Please submit those articles to the town clerk's office. Please make sure you get the signatures of at least 10 registered voters. That's it.
Sorry about that. Are there any select board announcements or comments to start off? Nope. Okay. Move this over a little bit. There's no follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. Is there any public comment that's not on the agenda? Give it a second, see if any hands pop up. Okay, there's no new business that I know of. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 1st and November 3rd and approval of the treasury warrants for November 10th, all in one big swoop?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Phoebe,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes 5-0. Pending contracts, we have one, and David Gray is here to answer any questions. It's a big contract. Libby, did you want to review anything, or is there any?
I was just going to mention that David's here for questions. We had 2 bidders for this particular contract. I'm kind of waiting for Brian to get on if people want details about that. He's having trouble, Erica, with the link apparently. In any event, we had 2 bidders, and this project is well within the appropriation, but David may be able to answer those questions as well. And I think you all are familiar with this project. We've had at least 2 pretty specific presentations on it. Maybe more.
Libby, it was 23 million, just for the viewers. What was the appropriation?
Do you have that information, David?
I do 32 million.
Okay,
Thank you.
so this is another, major sewer project that came in similar to Shimo, right? Came in way under.
It did,
Well,
yes, correct.
It's not entirely like Shimo, but it did come under. However, there are other things that will be used from the appropriation in engineering and OPM services and things of that nature. And there will be a number of sidewalk and sidewalk repairs done along the way.
That's not included in the 23.
I think we may have managed to make it into the 23. Did we, David, do you remember?
Yes, all 5 bid alternates were included in the total $23 million.
Okay. Any questions or comments for David or Libby? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Okay, town managers report.
Thank you. We just have 2 items under the town manager's report. They are traffic safety work group recommendations. And I guess I was under the impression that Art Gasparo was coming on for this. Erica, is he?
He is actually listed as an attendee. So
Oh, he is, yes, right.
I'll allow him to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Gibson. We're before you tonight with the 2 matters that were recommended positively from traffic safety. The first being for the creation of an off-street parking area on Main Street, which would result in the elimination of 1 on-street spot. And it would create 2 off-street spots. So in keeping with the general practice of the work group, when there is a net gain of parking, then the elimination of the on-street spot has been supported. And you can see the stuff that Ms. Mooney's put on screen, and happy to address any questions that you may have.
Any comments or questions for Art? Okay, Matt?
Just a comment. When I see beautiful side yards turning into parking yards, it just kind of, it just irks me. I wish we had adopted traffic management, paid parking and some other, I wish we had dealt with this better 20 or 30 years ago, so that every yard wasn't turned into parking lots. And so I have a hard time voting for these because of what I've seen growing up here from the time I was a kid. It's just really sad that has happened.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions or comments? Christy?
Just one question. So when the homeowners create 2 parking spaces, that's kind of, in a sense, freeing up 2 on-street while they're taking away 1. Can they also apply for visitor passes once they have their own parking.
They're in the residential parking district.
So that's a yes.
I don't believe this one is.
Yeah, but the ones that we had some complaints about Academy Hill a few years ago, they would leave the lot. They wouldn't park in their own lot. They would get residential stickers and park on Lily Street, blocking people into their houses. So yes, that's one of the things that we could address, with tighter residential stickers and looking at this holistically. But it's, there's not enough hours in the day for some of these things.
If you're ready to vote, let's take these separately. Is there a motion for A?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Hi.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
No.
Jason, I, it passes 4-1. Go on to B. This is off of Starbuck Road. Art.
So this is for, this was a request that was brought forth from some of the residents, I believe in part of the association out there, to eliminate parking on at least one side of the road for a portion of Starbuck Road as a result of congestion that was happening for folks, going to the beach there. There's a limited size parking area, and there's concern with the ability for emergency vehicles to get through the area with parking on both sides. So after some discussion, the work group recommends that the parking not be allowed on the south side of the road from Baltimore Street to approximately number 47 Starbuck, as shown by the red line on the sketch before you, and the parking would be able to remain on the other side of the road. Hopefully somewhat striking a balance between allowing some additional parking there for the beach, but maintaining clear access for emergency vehicles as may be needed.
Thank you, Art. Did this pass traffic safety? Was it unanimous? Do you remember?
I believe it was.
Okay. Christy?
I was just curious as to who owns the parking lot and if there's anything that we could do to try to expand parking. I really can see that we need to have emergency access, but at the same time hate to put something through that restricts access to the beach. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit tied on this one, trying to think of another solution.
Erica or Art?
Melissa knows, so.
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Erica. You go ahead.
was
I
gonna
just wanted to
say
make a comment after it.
I was just gonna say that property to the south that shows the parking lot, that's owned by the Nantucket Conservation Land Trust. And so they're the ones that actually approached us this year, but traffic safety has also received similar requests in the past. So because they were the majority landholder and we're bringing, more issues to light, it was voted to recommend.
Melissa?
Thanks, Jason. For disclosure, I'm a member of the Nantucket Land Trust, and Michael Byrne and Mr. Danziger are participants who also are on that trust and homeowners on Starbuck Road. So they're here, but I don't think expansion of that parking lot is feasible, Christy. And I think it's not necessarily about reducing access to the public beach, but if you see those pictures, it really is a public safety issue. Vehicles can't get down there, and the water in Nantucket, this is not a lifeguarded, that access isn't lifeguarded. So if they need to get there, they need to be able to get there. It's really a public safety issue first, not an access issue, in my opinion.
Thanks, Melissa. Matt?
Yeah, I thought the same thing that Christy mentioned. I looked at the head-in, there's a parking lot with kind of head-in parking on that one side. When someone sent us this afternoon some overhead pictures. And if one side of it had head-in parking like that, we could get just as many or more cars. If the trust would do that, the access would be solved and the safety would be solved. Stuff like the top picture you're showing now with the cars pulled up into the bushes, I think that's completely inappropriate, and those should be ticketed and enforced. But I think, I think Christie's onto something. If we're gonna have one side and could head in park along that entire side, I think it would be best for all involved. Was that a discussion, Art, at your traffic safety?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, we spent some time considering general alternatives and, understanding that there needs to be parking for access to the beach. I think part of the concern is whether there would be enough room in that layout to actually, with the curves, to create head-in parking within the road layout, if that's what you're talking about. But that was part of the discussion, what some alternatives might be. We discussed which side of the road should we recommend not having the parking. And then with respect to whether or not, more head-in parking could be created on the parcel that's owned by the Conservation Land Trust, that would really be up to them. And of course, all of this area is mapped for estimated and priority habitat as well. So you'd have another level of permitting there too.
Any other comments from board members before I go to the public? No. Okay. Can we go to Michael Byrne?
I'm unmuted. Can you see me also?
No, can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, first, thank you for considering this. As a long time, very long time resident of Starbuck Road and Nantucket, and as a trustee of the Nantucket Land Trust, I'm very grateful for the recommendation from the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee and grateful that you are taking this up. With regard to that parking lot that we established on Land Trust property, at its peak, it can accommodate about 25 cars. Some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we informally approached the Concom to ask about the feasibility of enlarging the parking lot to accommodate more vehicles. Informally, they said they did not feel that was appropriate. They thought that the parking that we had created was adequate and didn't want to see it expanded, which, I understand that. We're a conservation land trust. We're not in the business of taking conservation land and paving it over to make a parking lot. But the conditions that exist on Starbuck Road on these peak weekends, late July and all of August, when people are coming to that lovely beach with parking on both sides, it's dangerous. You've seen one photo there where large vehicles, particularly emergency vehicles, just cannot get through. So that's our primary concern. But in addition to that, they block fire hydrants, they block mailboxes, they block driveways. And if we could limit the parking to one side only, it would make a tremendous difference. While I'm grateful for the recommendation of the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, as a resident, I think it would be preferable that parking be allowed on the south side and prohibited on the north side for a couple of reasons. This area has been a popular destination for the 50 plus years that I've been there. Typically, cars approach the area from Nantucket Road onto Starbuck, and they park on the south side of Starbuck facing east. If they would now have to turn around and park on the north side, I think that's going to be chaotic. Plus, those of us who live on the north side of Starbuck have our water shutoff valves for our town water supply right at the edge of that road. This past summer, we had some knucklehead parked in front of our house and drove, despite having reflectors there to warn people. Somebody drove right over and parked and broke our water shutoff valve. So we think it would be better that parking be allowed on the south side, prohibited on the north side, but frankly, we'll be grateful for any relief that you can give us.
Thank you, Michael. We go to the next one, Joel.
I am asking him to unmute, but he's.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Did you hear anything I said?
No, just
Oh,
you
sorry.
said, you can hear me now.
All right. I'd like to confirm everything that Mike Byrne has said. We appreciate the town's concern about parking on both sides of Starbuck. We've been there for 43 years, and historically, cars have parked on the south side. There's developed something of a shoulder on the south side of the road with little or no vegetation, which is sort of a natural expansion of the road for parking. On the north side, it's very different. There's a steeper grade, lots of vegetation, and when cars park on the north side, they're in effect into the moors. Beyond that, there's a safety concern. The Burns and we have driveways accessing Starbuck Road from the north side. If parking were allowed on the north side, there's a safety concern when we egress our driveways, our visibility would be blocked by parked cars. So while I much appreciate the town's concern about parking on one side, I strongly urge that parking continue to be permitted on the south side, but not the north side. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Art, did you guys discuss this at traffic safety? Do you want to make that recommendation or comment on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to comment on that. We did discuss back and forth about which side of the road, and one of the reasons that we had recommended the south side is also related to the driveways, and the thinking was to facilitate the ease of access with the folks getting out of the driveways, backing out if you have parking on the other side of the road. Personally, we could either bring this back to the work group for further discussion on that. I could tell you that my opinion on it would be to defer to sort of local knowledge of the area. These residents have, probably the best feel for it. I think there's a very good point that's raised with respect to general circulation pattern. And if the area seems to fit better for parking on the south side, again, I can't speak for the entire work group, but I could tell you that I could, see that might be an outcome of a further discussion, and that, how that might work okay as well. I could see that it might result in a need for additional pieces of no parking on that south side if the folks can't get out of their driveway, but maybe you just start with it and then see how that goes.
That makes sense, Art. So does it make sense to you and the board to send this back to traffic safety? Maybe come back with north or south again, with, like you said, the local knowledge, as we have some time right before the season starts, so we could take another shot at this.
I would really defer to the board on that. If you certainly, we're advisory to the town manager, and if you want to just make a decision that based on the testimony that you've heard that the north side would be better, then that would be, certainly the prerogative of the board. And if you'd rather that the work group discuss it, then we're not having a November meeting, but we could discuss it in December.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
I'm fine with making a decision and following the local knowledge.
I agree.
Awesome. Okay. You want to make a
So
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the change that parking be restricted on the north side. Right? Am I getting that right? Whatever they said. Erica,
You're
can
right.
you help me remember?
I'll second
Am I
it.
right? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Matt. Just want to check with Erica, because the agenda item set on the south side. Is there a chance that somebody saw that and said, "Oh, I don't need to come in because it's not on the north," or vice? You know what I mean? there any issues there?
I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to
And
be
it's
careful.
the board's prerogative, I think, so.
Okay. All those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
John Holgate,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Art.
One more comment, Jason.
Sure. Yeah.
While we have some Nantucket Trust people, if you guys can find a way to increase, the head-in parking, now that we've done this, that would be greatly appreciated. We are, we don't have fewer people every year. We have more people and more cars every year. And, so hopefully we can accommodate them and still make it a nice place out there.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, moving on to the select board. I lost my way there. Reports and comments, town administration, request for select board direction regarding funding for private road repaving in connection with water main extension project in Surfside area.
Okay, so I'll introduce this with the caveat that most likely this will need to be continued to a future meeting because we are still awaiting some additional information. Also, the airport submitted some wording clarifications as to the purpose of the project overall that are a little more detailed than what's on the agenda information sheet, but we didn't have time to update that. And so that we'll get that out at a later time. And so just a tiny bit of background on this, beginning really with the Nantucket Harbor Shimo Plus Areas Sewer Project, it's become a practice to plan for curb to curb paving or reclamation of the road that is affected even on private roads rather than patch the trench in any lateral connections. And there are a number of lateral connections on this road. Due to airport funding restrictions imposed by the FAA, and I think the airport manager could speak more to this if need be, the cost of that is not covered by the airport for this particular project that normally would be that is the airport's project. So if we want to have this private road paved curb to curb, the town will need to cover that additional cost as we understand it. There are a couple of funding possibilities, although this is not a budgeted project. As of today, unfortunately, we do not have an adequate cost estimate developed. We are waiting for that from our engineer who we only recently engaged on this. So this is really an introduction of this issue to you all for tonight with hopefully further information next week. I think we would probably say that a fairly solid estimate for the work is in the $1 million range. And I would defer to the assistant town manager or the airport manager if they have any other details. And since it's not a budgeted project, if we do get that far, that we want to have the town cover this additional cost, the finance director could review with you the potential funding sources. So Greg or Tom, do you guys want to add anything to this or clarify? I may not have explained it overly.
Oh, Libby, I think you covered that very well. As much as we'd like to, provide for the full width paving, revenue diversion laws don't allow us to do that. So we appreciate working with the town on being able to accomplish it in some manner.
And I'd like to just point out that I quickly tossed the agenda item summary sheet together, and I do have some corrections. I called the MCP a municipal contingency plan. It's the Massachusetts contingency plan, and that is currently what the airport is operating under in response to their observed PFAS contamination adjacent to the airport. So to refresh your memories, as part of the response to their PFAS action, the airport is prioritizing bringing town water to the affected areas, west and south of the airport. I didn't really go into detail on that to explain where we are. And as Tom just said, it's really, I put in there just due to FAA restrictions. It really is, the FAA revenue use policy does not allow the airport to go to the full curb paving. So I was a little rash in how quickly I wrote it. And as Libby did say, we are working now to get better figures on what that would cost, because obviously the airport didn't look into that because they didn't have to. So that I just want to give some clarification to the AIS because that form is floating out there. And thank you to Noah Carberg for the assistant manager at the airport for clarifying it. That's all I got, Libby.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys both. I don't know if you would like to hear from Brian as to the potential funding sources. Okay, Brian, you want to give a quick overview? Thank you.
Sure. So we have a couple options. We could take this from the island-wide paving account that we have, but it would essentially wipe that out and would really limit us in our ability to do any spring paving, because this would pretty much eliminate everything that's left in that funding source. Through the hard work of Tom and Noah and their legal counsel, they have indicated that we could potentially offset the payment that they make to us on an annual basis. We could potentially do that on a short-term measure to be able to fund it, and then do a transfer at town meeting, potentially from free cash or other available funding sources, as a way to not completely take away all the island-wide paving money that we have. That would completely be wiped out by this. That option is something that we've talked about. We'd obviously have to figure a little bit more work on how to structure a ban for that, so that we would basically, through another funding source, i.e. potentially free cash, would just pay that portion of the ban down, and then it would be gone. Those are really the most logical solutions that we have to be able to do this if we're going to proceed. And I do want to mention and thank Tom and his staff for the work, the preliminary legwork in getting the FAA to agree that that would be an acceptable way to do this. So we certainly appreciate the work that they've done, and we'll continue to work with them on how to do this.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian, Tom, or Libby? Matt?
Yeah, I'm just, how do I say it? I say this every time we sign something with the FAA. I'm a little flummoxed at why they won't pay for the whole thing. I mean, this is, they tie our hands. It just seems to me that this is the FAA's responsibility, and this is being pushed onto the taxpayers, and I feel like that's inappropriate. So I'm sure that maybe there's nothing we can do. Maybe it can go into our litigation. This will be an expense, if the litigation ever gets anywhere. But I'm just disappointed. The FAA kind of gets their cake, and they get to eat it too. They get. It seems like sometimes it feels somewhat one-sided to me.
Tom's going to stay away from that.
I understand where you're coming from, and although it's an FAA regulation, it's actually driven by the airlines and the use of revenue. They fought this and won in the courts, and that's what established the regulations. So they're the ones that are really monitoring where we spend the money.
Yeah, Tom, it isn't a reflection on you. I'm saying that we talk about big business in the United States. We're going to pay to clean up all the oil. We're going to cap the taxpayers are going to cap millions of oil wells because of the way business is set up here, and they sell the company, and then they go bankrupt. So everyone pulls out every penny they can and sticks it to the taxpayer. I don't think that's that isn't very this is the airlines don't want to pay more. Here you go. So we are on the hook for this stuff, and it isn't really, it's not fair. Put it that way.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments, thoughts? I know when I first saw this, I went right to the private road part of it. Why are we getting in trouble paying for the private road? And then I understood that one, it's our policy to go curb to curb, but we also did that in Shimo, right? We paved curb to curb on all private roads. Is that right, Libby?
All the private roads that were paved already in that project were repaved.
Right. So I think just so you guys know, I'm fine with finding another source outside of the whatever you referred to, Brian, is it the Chapter 90 or our overall pavement budget?
The island-wide, the annual appropriation for island-wide.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to take it from there. If we can find another source,
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it. I think it should be curb to curb. Melissa?
I agree.
So you guys just need direction? No votes right tonight?
I think we want to come back to you with a real number.
Okay.
Because if it's, quite significant, then we may have to forego this, but we do want, and if it's going to impact other projects and initiatives, we might have to rethink it in this instance, but let's come back to you with a more solid number.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Sorry, it's Matt. Anything else on these roads that needs to be done and should be done before we open and close them?
There may be some drainage, and again, similar to the prior sewer project that we were mentioning, if there were drainage structures that were damaged or needed to be cleaned out, they were replaced or repaired or cleaned out. So we would do that as well. That's it.
Right.
I don't know that there are any other connections that would need to be made. I would hope not, because there's no sewer in that area. So it would just need to be made sure that the water lines are all connected, the laterals are all connected. But that's a good question, Matt. Thank you for asking that, because as we know, there's a habit of the second that road is paved, someone decides they need to open it to make a connection.
Right, and that's why I'm asking. There've been a couple that we paved like 3 years in a row. So I'm trying to avoid that. And Jason, I'm okay with what you suggested, but I just have to comment on some of this.
Thank you. Any other last words? No? Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Libby. Thanks, Brian, on that.
Thank you.
Okay, continued review, potential votes on select board sponsored 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles. Libby was gonna walk us through.
So, yep, I was just going to walk you through. So the last time you reviewed this was, I think it was October 27th. And since then, a couple of things have, and at that meeting, that was your initial meeting to start reviewing warrant articles and possible items that you might sponsor. So I just wanted to go over some things that still need to get direction on. So the first one, I tried to highlight them, and there may be a couple of other changes that have happened since that meeting. So paid parking remains out there. Do we or do we not want a warrant article, or I guess do we or do we not want that? And if you want me to, Jason, I could just continue on and you guys could go back, or do you want to talk about each one as we get to it?
I'd say each one, if anybody has any thoughts on paid parking. Christy?
I think my my biggest question is what would be needed in the next kind of fiscal budget, or is there something that we need to bring for town meeting approval just to keep this going for future years? I think we asked that last time, and I don't know if it's been clear if there's something that's needed for this town meeting or not.
Hold on, let me just grab my grab that warrant article. I think it's in your packet. The warrant article from 2020 town meeting, Article 66, simply specified, reads, to see if the town will vote to require a vote of town meeting prior to the implementation by the town of Nantucket of paid on-street parking. It doesn't give a time frame. So I think the idea is that there's going to need to be a significant lead time to implement paid parking. So if we want to implement it, say in fiscal 24, which would be hopefully the next possible time to do that for budgetary purposes, we would want to get this approved, I think, at this town meeting. Or if you all determine that you want to take this to town meeting, it's a non-binding advisory.
Matt?
Yeah, it's a non-binding advisory. I don't think we need to take it to town meeting. And I don't think we should be taking it to town meeting unless we have a plan. Unless we have a plan in place and can answer all the questions, because otherwise we know what it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of no's and a lot of, it'll be what it's been for 15 or 20 years, and so and when I've done a lot of reading on this, change is hard. People always complain. They don't want it. The businesses don't want it. Within a year or two, everyone says it's the best thing that ever happened. This is politically unpopular, but it's the right thing to do. And so for a lot of reasons, and so I think that's, and I look at it, it isn't unfair to poor people. It isn't unfair. The consultants we were working with Remain 15 years ago said, if you get more turnover and you don't have the long-term parking, you may end up with 2 hours free. And if you have 15% of the spaces open at any one time, anyone can come down, have ice cream with their kids, walk on Main Street and head home and not pay anything. And so I think there's a lot of positives to this if it's done right. But I don't think that we want to be on town meeting floor this year arguing with no information. So I don't think there's anything we need to do other than ensure that we, put funding in for next year. And, and I still believe it can't be us. Someone like Jason, I think said last time, someone has to own it. It has to be a parking commission, and then it's going to take a few years of looking at the numbers and tweaking it and adjusting it to make it right. So those kind of details need to be worked out first.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? Christy?
Thank you. I agree with Matt, and having the plan, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how do we keep kind of the momentum going? So is there some position that we need to fund? I know we took the funding off for a parking coordinator, and right now we have the scanners, the license plate readers, but nobody's actually looking at that data. So nobody's putting together a plan. So I think that's kind of where I'm looking for a direction of what would we need for this year to keep that momentum going that we had pre-COVID.
Well, for one thing, we need more staff resources to run it, because we don't have that right now. And as we know, we don't have a transportation planner. And I know there's a lot of ongoing discussion about getting that position filled, which we have been discussing very recently. And hopefully it will get filled sooner rather than later. And that could be task number one.
Dawn and Christy?
I mean, in the scheme of all of the things that we have going on right now, this is not my top priority for resources. And I think that it could continue to wait a bit, especially with this just coming out of COVID and kind of getting back to normal with street closures and that kind of thing. But I don't think we're ready for taking anything to town meeting.
Dawn, Libby? I'm sorry, Christy?
I was just going to say, it sounds like it's not ready for this year. So I think that we're good to move on to the next potential warrant article.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I just wanted to point out, I took off this idea of rescinding or amending chapter 46-4 of the town code regarding town office locations, because as we heard from town council when we were discussing this previously, that will occur through an appropriation for design funds for a centralized municipal facility out of town. Short-term rental regulations. This has been in here as a result of discussions that the board has on and off had, and I just am not really sure where we stand with this one. But I have heard some of you say over the course of the last few months since the last town meeting. What would our goal be here? What are we trying to resolve or get at? And I don't know that that's been clearly identified either.
Any comments? Matt?
Yeah, after we got out of last year's town meeting, I made a push to put a committee together through the select board. That was not, supported, and my understanding is we said that's more properly placed in the planning department. And let's let them take a crack at it. I've spoken to people there and they haven't discussed it yet. Although there are likely a couple different articles coming this year. So unfortunately, I think we're going to be in a situation like we were last year with articles coming about something that's very important that we as a community haven't, our planning office and our administration and ourselves have not dealt with. And I think we all know that there are impacts. And I think that, and that's so how, I think once we see the articles that show up, I think, maybe we will make a decision then to do something at the last minute, or I don't know what we'll do, but I could see it, from both, I could see it being bad from both sides of this issue. And so I think that I wish I had been a little stronger, and I wish we had, sort of tackled this 8 months ago. So here we are.
Any other thoughts? I don't think we're ready to put anything together. It's we might do it once we see what comes out from other places and our planning. Dawn?
I don't think we're anywhere near ready to propose something at town meeting. I mean, I still continue to feel that this issue has not really had the problem that we're trying to address defined. And there's been a lot of changes over the past during COVID of just the whole landscape of short-term rentals on Nantucket that are actually probably heading in a pretty positive direction. So, I mean, I think the discussion is valid, but jumping to warrant articles is really, really premature.
Thank you, Dawn. Matt?
Yeah, well, and I think there are going to be warrant articles, Don. That's what I'm, sort of that's my point, is I think there will be warrant articles, and maybe they will be premature, and maybe they won't be well researched, and maybe we won't understand the impacts of them. A problem I'm trying to solve is someone stood, I think Jamie Howard stood at town meeting and talked about no one is asking for Mid-Island. Well, that's not what I'm seeing. I have property in Mid-Island, and I'm seeing it happen in Mid-Island. And so I think that the problem I'd like to see is what changes, if any, do we have to make to incentivize and to keep year-round and workforce housing. I'm fearful anyone that had to hire this summer saw the difficulty of hiring. There was no place for anyone to live. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And I think that this is one, I think this is a contributing factor. It's not the only factor. There's a lot of them, but I think, there are a lot of places have put regulations in place. They do it by area. They say you can have short-term rentals in the downtown and short-term rentals out by the ski hill, but you can't have it in the residential areas where our residents live, and so, or they do it that way. They do it a lot of different ways. And so I would, at some point, I think that we should be looking at the various ways it's done and look at what might work for us. I think it's going to be very hard to run, to service all the people that are visiting if we have nobody working here, nobody here to service them. And to have people here to service them, we need places for them to live. So, I think that they're very closely related. I can't imagine that we're going to have 8 boats a day come over every morning 8 at a time to unload our workforce. So,
Thank you, Matt. Any other thoughts? Melissa?
Thanks, Jason. I, I I do think that there was conversation, and we did have a joint meeting with the planning board to try to get some momentum on this. So I don't think it's 100% accurate that there was no support. I think what there was there's no momentum from either board to sort of, decide which board is going to carry the torch to suggest, which is, figure out what are the problems and what are the solutions we're looking for. So, maybe it's worthwhile to keep on an agenda for us to keep another meeting with planning or NBC and come up with some sort of action plan from the community perspective or policy setting perspective of what are the problems we're trying to solve, and what are some sound policy recommendations that would answer those. There's a lot of disagreement, a lot of the comments you've made tonight, Matt, but I think the truth of the matter is that we have a very hot market where, what used to be neighborhoods that were residential in Mid-Island, and my neighborhood's one of them, you're seeing houses being sold to people who live in Island because they can pay 1.4 million. Even if you had a family on Nantucket who could pay 1.1, they're getting an extra $300,000 and is pushing local families out. That's not necessarily the same as a short-term housing or short-term use issue. And, some of those people may or may not be using them for short-term rentals. So I think blanket regulations are where we get tripped up. I would love to see us continue this conversation because we do have it's part of the affordable housing issue. I'd love to see the Affordable Housing Trust give us some sense of, truth to the comments that a lot of these houses are being sold and moving out of year-round family market to short-term rentals. I see them moving out of year-round family ownership, but I'm not sure that necessarily always means they're going into the short-term rental market. And I think I guess I also would like to say I think there are going to be citizen warrant articles that come out because people are trying to find a solution, and they're going to keep doing that if we as policymakers aren't committed to finding that solution. And unfortunately, this issue hasn't risen to the top of the many competing priorities I think we have as a board. But maybe the idea is that we don't need to worry about what we're putting forward for this ATM, but we do need to, demonstrate some commitment that this is a priority. And I don't know where that fits in on our schedule and our conversations and what the appropriate next steps are for that. Because you're right, there is certainly a sentiment in the community that there are problems and we need to define what they are and then figure out what the appropriate solutions are. And I think we need to also be careful of making, overly gross general statements. Everyone has to, because it trips us all up and it's too nuanced of a subject for there to be any gross generalization, in my opinion. So I don't know where to go with that, but I think for tonight's is I don't think we're ready to bring anything forward for the warrant. And I would like to see us keep some finger on the pulse of what a conversation or planning around how this is affecting. I think we landed on this affects quality of life for our residents. So it fits into a lot of our strategic plan issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. That's one of the things I've been trying to figure out is how does it fall in line? What could we put forward, if anything, that would fall in line with our strategic plan and goals, mainly for housing. If there was something that I knew would really be significant help with housing or protecting the future of housing without all the nuances and unintended consequences, then I would be for it. So I'm close, but I can't I don't feel like there's enough, if it's not data or research or understanding of what we could put forward that would help our year-round housing issues when it comes to STRs. That's what I'm not seeing yet. Definitely not, I don't think there's anything from us here that we know. That's what I would be in favor for. Matt?
No, and I agree, Melissa, that where's the data? But if no one is working on it, there won't be any data. And if, you know, and so that's my point is, and I know that we met with the planning department, but I asked, you know, people, a couple of people on the board, and they haven't discussed it. We've probably talked about it more than they have, you know, since we met. And so that's my point. I know that we met, and so, and I don't think, you know, and I just think that this is, you know, it may be, I think we may be too late to this issue to be, you know, just to, in all honesty, I think we may be too late. I think, you know, it's so prevalent through the entire island that it may not be, that any type of restrictions or change may not be possible. But, you know, it may not be politically possible, but I think that that's, you know, we have to figure out what the right thing to do is and then try to do it and see if that actually is the case. So.
Any other comments from the board? Are we okay taking some public comment on this, Matt?
Yeah, one other comment. It doesn't have to just be this. We can impact it through other ways. We can change, like we have, you know, adjusted some of our fee schedules and done that type of thing. We could classify certain, you know, buildings as commercial if they're used commercial, and at least be getting extra money and giving the people who aren't using it commercially a tax break. So there's things that we can do without even town meeting, you know, with as policy that we could be talking about and considering that I think we should. And so, you know,
Thank you, Matt. Christy?
Thank you. I was going to make a comment that I know that we had all met last year, and it kind of feels like it got dropped by the wayside, that nothing kind of came out of any sort of committee. But I think, you know, what we've heard over and over again tonight is we've had, you know, severe staffing shortages, as has everybody else. And I think it was too hard this year to get, you know, town resources to focus on this. And that's the beauty of our form of government right now, is that there's probably going to be some citizen warrant articles that come out, and, you know, they might have had the time to do some research and bring together some planning ideas. So I think in terms of us putting something forward, it's not worth it, but it might be worth it when we hear next week what some of the citizen warrant articles are to, you know, back some of those or have some ideas they might bring some ideas that we would want to implement in future years or something like that. So I think waiting and seeing is something that we can do.
Thank you, Christy. Can we go to Sarah Ellis? Has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted, this is probably a very unpopular opinion, given our last town meeting. I wanted to go back to something that Melissa said about quality of life for our residents. I live in residential old historic, and I have two abutters that are absentee who do short-term rentals. And, you know, during the pandemic, this is a story. During the pandemic, they rented to families because that was the pod philosophy. And I heard kids screaming. I don't care. Kids are welcome. In the past, it's been all weekend, like wedding parties, this and that. They have outdoor speakers put in. It's tiring when you work, and that is what's next to you. And on the corner is a Copley property that had an absolute vodka truck parked in their driveway one year, and it's the only people I finally called the police on. You know, zoning is one thing, and I understand it, but I do resent that I live in that particular designation of zoning, and that every 70% of my street and my neighborhood is year round. And I love that. And it's frustrating to have to go over and tell people to turn it down. And I already have, for those people that say I should put up with it, I already have neighbors that are aggravating that are year round. I'm not trying to say that I have to have a perfect life, but I understand in certain neighborhoods why it's very difficult. I also understand the housing issue. I have a legal apartment in my house. I only rent it year round. I am just doing the best I can, and I think it's a very divisive issue, but I think it's been presented as an issue that only certain people are concerned with, and I don't think that that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Go to Brooke Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can state that you don't know the impact if you never look to find the impact. And I'm really disappointed, frankly, that we are here again and we still don't know the impact. And I'm going to say what I said the last time when you guys discussed this issue, that the opportunity for this select board to take a leadership role and find out so we know what we can do to deal with the issues, its impact on affordable housing, its impact on folks like Ms. Ellis. And what I worry is the future impact in many, many neighborhoods that will have no ability to control this train when it's, farther down the tracks. So anyway, I would really repeat that I think that it's this board's job to figure it out, because it's more than affordable housing. While I, as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, am willing to do my part in determining how it impacts the affordable housing, it's many other things, and I think it is a select board level issue. And I encourage you to take action to learn, so we can stop kicking down the can down the road with the comments that we don't really know what the impact is. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. You go to Rick Atherton.
Thank you, Jason. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, just to recall my impression of the joint meeting with the select board and the planning board was that the outcome was that a bylaw change would be drafted by, the planning director, town administration, somebody that would authorize short-term rentals in every residential district. Every house could be short-term rental for a minute, a year, whatever. And the silence, I feel, is acquiescence, so that all the participants of that meeting, the select board and the planning board, said absolutely nothing. I think that's the expectation the voters should have, is what your approach is. And I think that's a big mistake, because at some point, the voters are going to recognize what Brooke and others have hinted at, that this is a serious issue and year-round housing is being converted. It may just be investors, it may be short-term, it may be secondary residences, but I think you have to start asking the staff members to get the data that's important, and you don't even ask, then people are going to take this into their own hands. And I think that's not necessarily the best way to go, unless you accept some leadership here. So Jason, I just wanted to be clear on my reaction to the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any other comments from the board? Matt?
Yeah, and if Rick is right, and that is what happens, if we have an article that makes this legal everywhere, that isn't something that you can fix quickly and easily. There'll be grandfathering, there'll be, people will have vested rights at that point that will carry forward for many years. It'll take 10 or 20 years to undo it if we even can. And I'm not sure we have I'm not sure that there's a political will, to be completely honest, to tackle any of this, even if we had something that was really smart and well done. But, but I am worried if it becomes legal everywhere, if we change it, change it under the guise of, cleanup, I very much worry what will happen for the future.
Thank you, Matt. Dawn?
I mean, this is such a difficult issue. There are so many nuanced reasons why people choose to sort of share their homes, short-term rent for different periods and different, whether it's a portion of their house, a cottage, their whole property. And it's been a Nantucket way of life, like forever. And I mean, I understand the fear of, the potential investor that has absolutely no vested interest in Nantucket. That is not the norm. And there may be a valid discussion on ways to address that, but it's very challenging. The risk that we run by putting blanket limitations on STRs is becoming so incredibly elitist here that the only people who buy are people that don't ever need to rent. And that essentially makes Nantucket the most exclusive gated community in the world. And that is the double-edged sword here. And I think that we just have to be really thoughtful about this.
I agree. I think we need to move on, but soon. I just want to say I was in Oahu on the North Shore when they outlawed a long time ago short-term rentals, but everybody still does it. They find other ways. They pay cash. They use Venmo. There's other ways to get around it. People are really secretive, and they've got people out finding people $10,000 a day. They're out looking, and it didn't curb it as much as they thought. I stayed at a friend's house. Okay, any other comments before we move on? Melissa?
I guess, Jason, maybe just to you and Christy, I think there is a lot of will on this board to have some subsequent conversation, even if we're not ready for town meeting. So, as you're planning future agendas, I don't know exactly what the next steps should be, but I think there is the will from this board to discuss what those are. We just need to, elevate it to a priority and figure out what. So I hope this isn't the last conversation we have over the next few months about short-term rentals and their impact.
I don't think it will be. Duly noted. Thank you. Last comments, Matt?
Yeah, we have a real estate office. We have, people that we could ask to come back with actual facts. And, so that next time we talk about it, we have an informed discussion rather than a blah, blah, blah. So hopefully that, that will be something that we do.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, nothing for right now, Libby. We can go on to the next one.
Okay, and just to comment on that last item about having the real estate office do it, there's one person in that office and he is completely overburdened with other things. So if the board wants something like that to happen, we're going to need some specific direction on what exactly it is that you want, so we can figure out how to secure the resources to get it for you.
Yeah, thank you, Libby.
Municipal. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to point, I highlighted sewer under home rule petitions. I highlighted sewer connection fee waiver reductions. You had a discussion about this last week, and we agreed the town council would proceed to prepare a home rule petition for this purpose. So that is underway. And then MGL acceptances, Mass General Law acceptances. we've had an ongoing off and on discussion about the so-called WIF, Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. And prior to COVID, we had intended to conduct some research on this. It does also require a ballot vote, and we just have not been able to get to it. So I don't think we're ready to put it forward. We can kind of keep it on the back burner if you all are in agreement with that. Otherwise, we'll again have to figure out how to get at it with more information. Community impact fee on short-term rentals. Town council, I think, explained this at your prior meeting when you talked about this. So I'm not quite sure if you want to proceed with it or not, or if you want to have more discussion or whatever.
On, and Matt?
I'm kind of concerned that this is really hard to get at. I think it's more geared towards places that have things like apartment buildings where there are multiple units owned by the same person that are rented. And just from the projections that we saw a while ago, I don't know that it would be enough of a generator of revenue with all the potential workarounds to make it worthwhile, the administrative end of instituting it. But open to discussing it.
Matt?
Yeah, I think I had someone contact me after the meeting last time to say that they think that town council explained it sort of backwards. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. The first, there's two sections of it. The first section that you vote is for the commercial short terms. You have to accept that before you can accept other types of short terms, not short term, but the tax. Then you have to accept that on the commercial people before you can add it to anyone else. And I think he had that backwards. I don't remember that he did. If this is, I've seen projections where people thought it was $500,000 a year. It might be 250,000 a year. It might be 150. That's something that we should get those projections. I think for the, I support it, at least I support it for at least the commercial end for the, the more than one units. I think we should be doing it. And if it's 150, 250 a year, that would amortize a fair amount of bill, and you have to have 35% of it go toward housing. We could have more than that go to housing, and it would amortize a fairly decent project or two or three. So I think it's something that we should be putting numbers to and, and considering. Again, I think I would love to see the work completed to know what the facts are so that we could discuss this with facts instead of guessing.
Melissa?
Thanks, Jason. One thing that's appealing to me about this is I tend to agree with Matt that, the potential of how it could earn some money is of benefit to the community if it's put back into affordable housing, infrastructure, things like that. But I also think the registration process that would need to come out of it that would help us paint the picture of how structures are being used is also of great benefit to us. And I think we've been having this conversation for several years now about, how do we differentiate the different types of structures being used for short-term rentals. They're commercially owned, owner occupied, so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of merit to continuing to explore this. And I think there's probably more upside to the community by doing that. Not sure it's 100% ready for town meeting, but I agree. I think there's some more information we could get out of it to make a good decision whether or not this is the right fit for Nantucket.
Thank you, Melissa. So I'm hearing not Matt.
Yeah, the people are required already to register with the state. I haven't looked at that to see what information they're required to give. I don't necessarily think it has to be a huge registry here. I think, San Diego, how they deal with some of these things is you have you sign something at your, when you do your taxes, when you pay your property taxes, you sign that you do it or you don't do it. And that's under penalties of perjury. So it doesn't add any more staff to it or anything else. It's a form that's filled out, and people are required now to fill out a form for the state. I haven't looked to see what it takes, but it could do exactly what you're talking about, Melissa. It could, sort of parcel it out a little bit better, so we could keep an eye on it and we could see what the changes are that are happening over time, one way or the other.
Melissa?
Thank you. I guess my only other thought is that, even though in FY21 Plymouth collected approximately $50,000, even that, and 35% of that having to go to affordable housing or infrastructure, that's real money, and can have a positive impact on helping us do some of the things like well, sorry, lost my train of thought, but I think you know what I was saying. Thanks.
Thanks, Melissa. Any other thoughts there? Okay, move on, Libby. Was that the last one?
Yes, so on that community impact fee one, what I'm hearing is not for 2022, but work to develop some revenue projections and what it would take to implement. Is that what we're saying? Okay.
Yes.
That was basically it. I just wanted to point out that there is a potential real estate purchase pending select board final review, which we'll get onto one of your agendas sometime soon. And I think that's it, unless you all have anything that is missed here that you have want to see on the warrant that is not on here right now. Otherwise, at your meeting next week, we should have a list of the citizen warrant articles to go over. So it won't be in your packet because they're not due till Monday afternoon, but we'll hopefully the signatures will be able to get certified and all for your meeting on Wednesday. If they're not certified, then we'll have to carry that over to December 1st.
So you're saying, Libby, we might not actually have them for the 17th to know what they are?
Well, we'll have, they'll be submitted, but the signatures need to be certified. And depending on how many articles are submitted, that could take some time,
Right.
Possibly more than a day. Hopefully not, because the town clerk's office is so efficient and excellent at getting this done. Hint, hint, town clerk staff. But hopefully we will have be able to have a list for you.
Okay. All right, we can move on to review of 2022 select board meeting schedule. Did you want me to kind of go over that, Libby, what we talked? So we reviewed it today in the agenda meeting, and it's very similar. We started off with similar to this year, but I think the questions were, there was one question in December at the end of the year, if we want to keep it similar to 2021, not having, sorry, let me bring up my, could you bring it up, Erica? Do you have it on the, thank you. So to have a meeting on the 21st or not. So this year, the meeting would be on the 22nd. We do not have a select board meeting, but next year I thought we should at least have it, if maybe not have any big policy decisions, but leave it there in case something needs to get done before, mid-January, a shorter meeting. So would the board rather not have a meeting on the 21st? I'm suggesting to have one, but I'm fine.
That's fine.
Fixing it. Fine, Don. Okay, I'm not hearing much, so we'll keep it, Libby. Keep the 21st.
How about the 24th, Jason?
Sure, let's have a select board meeting.
Humbug.
What is the
It's
24th?
fine.
Is that a Friday?
I'm joking.
Okay.
That's Christmas Eve.
Oh, the 24th. Okay. And then can you go to July and August? So in August, we would have just 2 meetings, the 3rd and the 17th. But there's 3 Wednesdays, I think, in that, just the way that the month ends up. So we'd be skipping 3. But I think that worked well this year, just having those 2 meetings. And then July, we had 3, right? 1, 2, 3. Years ago, we only had 2 in July, but we added a 3rd one too, just because we're busy. And I think this last year with town meeting and COVID and Erica?
So I wanted to note too, with not having 3 meetings in August, usually we don't have a meeting the first week in September. So that usually gives us that 2-week break there, but because Labor Day is so late and the first meeting is the 7th, that's just the way the calendar worked out. So.
Okay. So the way we have it is we'd have a meeting on the 17th. And the next meeting would be 3 weeks later. Everybody fine with that? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yes.
Yeah, we good? In July, are we good with the 3? Or do you want to go back down to 2 like the old days?
I'm fine with the 3. I feel like there's, just it's the pace of work that needs to get done doesn't slow down in July.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'd rather have 3 meetings at 2 hours versus 2 meetings at 3.5 hours each. Okay, so we're good there, no changes? All right. Do you need approval of that, Libby, or is this, we're good?
I think you're good with a consensus.
Okay.
Got it.
Are you guys good with the school breaks too? This year, it's actually in March instead of February, and then there's one in April.
So which would we not have a meeting on?
So you wouldn't meet on March 2nd because that's school vacation week,
Okay,
just with the way that the calendar runs. So we would actually have a full meeting calendar in February, and then we wouldn't meet that first week in March or the last week. So we'd still have 3 meetings. So 4 if you count the joint meeting. And then in April, we'd have that week with the school vacation week also. And that's been following the board's process that they've had in place for the last couple of years.
I'm fine with it.
My only question is with town meeting being that first week of May, is there a concern about missing that April meeting? Or do you think we'll be okay?
I think we're fine because everything's pretty much done by then.
Yeah,
Right.
it should be okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's more of January, February where it gets down to the nitty gritty with budgets and last, article amendments.
And you've got a robust meeting schedule for those times. So.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Erica. Anything else we need to think about? For that? Nope. Okay. Any select board comments or reports? Christy?
I just wanted to report back on the NPDC meeting that we had this past Monday. We had a really great discussion with Karen McGonigal on, we got an IT update similar to what the select board has received, but went into a little bit more depth of what it would take to create a municipal light. It's MLP, I forget what the P stands for, but she had discussed it with us a little bit broadly, but went into a little bit more detail. So it's a very fascinating kind of overview of what it would take to bring municipal broadband to Nantucket and kind of the steps that would have to take it. It would need 2 votes at consecutive town meetings to make that happen. So it is a long process, but something that it was good to hear kind of outlined, not just kind of this fantasy idea of how to bring it here, but what it would take to actually do it, and even some cost estimates of how to get it done. So if you guys are interested in that, I'd suggest watching that video. And the other thing to report back to select board was Leslie announced that the chamber has opened up the applications for the Rock Solid grant that the town has provided funding for. It's their 2nd round. So any for-profit small businesses are eligible to apply for grant funding. And I think the application is a relatively quick turnaround, so I'd encourage you to apply as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Christy. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantino,
Hi.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges, aye. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Libby. Bye, Erica.